I'm continuing my story of Old Joe. This is Old Joe Part 2. Reg had climbed up to Millie's bunk and was shaking her awake. Slowly, he cautioned as she woke. Slowly look at the window, the face is back. Slowly, Millie looked at the face. She almost bounded back to get away from the sight. Trying to gather her wits, she eventually managed to clamber out of bed and lower herself onto Reg's bunk, and then to the floor. When she was steady, she managed to find the courage to look at the horrible, gooey face again. Poor man, she decided, with her head on one side. We must help him. Amy gasped. Help him? Her eyes grew very large as she peeped out from Pat's chest. I couldn't bear to touch him, and she shuddered terribly as she clasped a hold of Pat and just clung there. Reg swallowed hard. Tell you what, Mill, I'll go out there and see what I can do for him. He was glad there was no door leading outside from his bedroom. He had to go out through a door directly facing the window and down a corridor to the main entrance. While he was gone, Millie and Patrice watched terrified as the face of old Joe slithered off the window and the mantis dropped so that they couldn't see him any longer. Even when Millie told her daughter that the face was gone, Amy still continued to smother her face in Pat's chest. Just then, Reg came back in carrying something. I went out there to help him, but I was too late. All I could find was a puddle of goo with his clothes in it. Millie shuddered. Poor chap, he just seemed to melt off the window. She looked at the object her husband was holding. What's that you've got there, Reg? A broken bottle, most of one. It's covered in blood, so it looks like he made himself into that mess on purpose. He was obviously very lonely, and Reg held up the bottle. Amy chose this moment to look up again at the window where a few drops of blood were sliding down, and shuddered before turning her attention to the broken bottle still in Reg's hand and shuddering again. Back to bed then, Reg encouraged with a forced smile. Millie emitted a nervous laugh and stared at her husband. Bed? She mocked. After what's just happened? The man's just died out there, you know. Died. Melted. Reg sighed. Look here. We couldn't help it, now could we? Maybe if we got out there sooner we could have done. I want to know what caused that man to, melt, Millie sobbed with clenched fist. Or I wasn't. I want to know, find out whether he or not he melted at all. Patrice was tired of this talk. Dad's right, Mum, let's get some sleep. And he went to his bed and began to climb beneath the sheets. If he didn't really melt, where is he? Millie continued, ignoring Patrice's advice. And who is he? Oh, for goodness sake, Reg, please, go and see if old Joe's still living or not. Reg could see that Millie was getting in a state, so he decided to do as she asked, if only to get her to calm down a bit. All right. I'm going. Yes, you're there. So he made his way out to the door again to go to the inn to look for old Joe, and on his way he threw the broken bottle into a waste bin. When Reg had gone and Amy had settled herself back properly on Patrice's bunk, squashing his legs, Millie decided to go and make an all drink. I'll make it a cocoa, she promised. She had only been out of the room 30 seconds when she heard Amy scream and an unbelieving gasp from Patrice. Millie rushed happily back into the bedroom, where she found her son and daughter staring at the window with eyes as large as saucers. Patrice had jumped out of bed and was sitting on the edge of his bed with his arms around Amy again, and they were just sitting there like statues, staring. And Emily did exactly the same thing as she looked out of the window and saw. What? It was a large furry beast. It couldn't be a bear. No, it looked more like a mixture between a werewolf and an abominable snowman, and, strangely, that old Joe whose face had been melting all over the window earlier. It was massive and black, and it screwed its front paws up into fists, raised them both high, and brought them swiftly down to bang heavily on the window. Then it repeated the action over and over again, in slow, pounding rhythm. Reg made towards old Joe's inn very cautiously and unsurely. There was a light flickering in one of the front windows, and when Reg reached the main door, he realised it was ajar. Cautiously, he pushed it open fully and tiptoed in. He wasn't used to this type of thing, and his heart seemed to be thudding in his head. The door of the room with the flickering light was wide open, so Reg glanced in nervously. A candle was on the small table, flickering away, and a rocking chair was rocking away merrily, as if it had just been vacated. Reg's thin nerves began to wear through, so he decided to vacate the building. Outside, Reg jumped when he saw the path leading away from the inn towards the barge. It was littered with broken bottles like the one old Joe had been holding, and they were all splattered with blood. Reg knew they hadn't been there when he entered the inn. He almost ran back towards the barge until he noticed the giant ape-like creature that was pounding his fist on the bedroom window. He stopped suddenly. If he went the ordinary way to the door, the creature would definitely see him. So Reg knew that he'd have to swim around to the other side of the barge where the monster wouldn't be able to see him and climb aboard there. So Reg made his way as quickly but quietly as he could to the other end of the barge, where he lowered himself slowly into the freezing canal water. Then he began to swim around to the other side of the barge, holding on tightly to the side of the boat rocked from the force of the creature's onslaught. Eventually, Reg managed to climb aboard the boat and sneak in the main doors without submitting to the temptation to peep around and see what the evil monster was doing now. Thinking hard over what to do, Reg rushed towards the bedroom and flung the door open. Millie, Amy, and Pat were all carrying on the furthest wall, away from the window, next to the door. Amy flung her arms around her father, even though he was dripping wet from his unwelcome swim. "Dad, what happened?" she asked. "I had to swim round the barge to get in so as that thing wouldn't see me," Reg replied as he stood transfixed watching the monster bring his fist down on the window again, causing the barge to shudder. "What are we going to do, Reg?" Millie shrieked. Reg was just about to suggest something when the creature thumped his fist down on the glass again. The window warped and began to bend inwards. "Get some empty barrels, all of you, quick. He's going to be in here before we know it." Action followed words as they all began to lug empty barrels into the bedroom, but not all the barrels had been fetched when the monster delivered the blow that was to be fatal to the window. The glass shattered and now lay all over the floor and bunks. Reg was the only witness to this event, and they watched in horror as the monster tried to lift his leg over the remainder of the wall to enter their room. Reg lifted the barrel that he had been bringing in when the window was smashed, and he flung it hard at the monster, knocking him back outside. The monster regained his balance and came back to the window, holding onto the jagged edge of where the window had been without feeling any pain at all, and roared angrily. Reg picked up another barrel and threw it at the beast. But this time it loosed the edges of the window, caught the barrel neatly, and threw it back. It almost hit Reg. Then the rest of the family came in with the remaining empty barrels. They formed a queue and began to take turns hurling empty barrels at the furious beast. But the beast always came back to the window after being knocked askew. Now the creature raised his fists and thumped the wall at either side of where the window used to be. The whole wall looked as if it was about to collapse. "Keep throwing," Reg ordered as he flung another barrel at the creature. There were only 3 empty barrels left. The other members of the family had 1 each. "I'm going to fetch some full barrels to see if this will stop him," Reg decided and made to leave the room. "You can't carry him on your own," Millie argued, but Reg just shouted back for them to carry on throwing the empty barrels as he rushed off. When he came back with a full barrel, Millie had just hurled her empty barrel at the monster, and he was struggling to get up off the floor outside the broken window. While the creature was still struggling to its feet, Patrice and Reg hurried away to fetch more full barrels. When they returned, Amy was throwing her empty barrel at the monster, now advancing again at the window. There was just 1 empty barrel left, so when Millie lifted it to fling it at the angry Yeti-like thing, the others scurried to fetch the rest of the 4 barrels. "It's a shame to do this," Raj cried when they returned with the 4 barrels, "but it seems to be the only way of getting rid of him," and he flung the first of the 4 barrels at the animal. "It's a sure way of getting you off the booze," Millie wheezed as he attempted to sling the second. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th were thrown out of the window in the same way, but although they have knocked Yeti askew, he still advanced. It was the last overall barrel. "If you don't get in with this one," Millie warned them, "we're done for." Patrice and Reg both held one end of the barrel and lifted it ready. The hairy bulk came to the window again. All you might," Reg encouraged, and they heaved the barrel forward as hard as they could. The force was so strong that it knocked the Goliath back against the side of the barge, and then bowled him over the side between the barge and the towpath. The last full barrel of beer followed the defeated ape into the canal. "I ain't staying here 1 single minute longer," Millie broke the silence. "Me either," Reg assured him. "Go fetch Blackie, Patrice." "Me?" Patrice grumbled, but his complaint was ignored. All right, he gave up and set off. The passage between the inn and the spooky trees was no longer filled with mist, and Patrice made the journey without feeling chilled. He found the stables behind the inn pretty easily, and Blackie came quietly, his fear gone, and memory of the earlier part of the evening gone too. Going back down the passage, Blackie didn't even shy at the sleeping shadows from the weird trees. Patrice quickly led Blackie back to the barge and harnessed him up to it. He glanced in the space between the barge and the towpath, but both the creature and the barrels could no longer be seen. Without further ado, the Roberts set out again, glad to get away from the place of their nightmares. The barge was secured in front of old Joe's inn. Norman took Dapple around the back of the inn to settle him for the night. Then he returned to the front of the inn, where he had seen light flickering in one of the windows. He found the main door ajar, so he went in and looked into the room from where the flickering light had been coming from. An old man was sitting in the rocking chair, reading an old book by the light of the single candle. "Excuse me, are you Joe?" Norman asked cautiously, after clearing his throat. The old man slowly turned his head to look at Norman. "Yes, I'm Joe," he smiled quickly. "Can I help you?" "We've left our horse in your stables," Norman exclaimed. "I hope that's all right. You don't mind, do you?" "Of course I don't," Joe dismissed. "It's nice to see a young face. Part of a family, are you?" "Yes," Norman's face fell, "but fortunately my father is an alcoholic." "Oh dear," Joe sympathized. "Well, never mind. I know some cures for that. I'll show you some, but not right now." "Great, I'll look forward to that," Norman agreed wholeheartedly. He'd do anything to get his dad off the drink. "Then I'd best be getting back to the barge then now." As Norman was making his way back to the barge, he failed to notice two small tombstones, almost completely hidden by weeds, one slightly larger than the other. They were the graves of old Joe and his stable boy. On close inspection, it is revealed that they both died of drink. The end. I wrote that in October 30th, 1987. And that is the end of this video. If you liked this story, please give this channel a like and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye!